The views, comments, stories, and opinions shared within this podcast are our own, or those of our guests, and in no way represent the views of the companies, associations, or organizations that any of us may work for or represent. All stories, events, and tales shared within this episode may or may not have happened in the manner in which they were told. They may or may not have even happened at all. The details have been changed to protect the innocent and the guilty alike. This is Squawk Ident. Welcome aboard Flight 139 of the Squawk Ident Podcast, recorded on the 26th of September, 2023. From the Aviator Sound Studios from somewhere in Southern California. On today's flight, we will be joined by a wide-body captain that has recently flown his final flight as a commercial airline pilot. After 38 years of flying the line, he's hung up his captain's hat for a final time. He joins us today to explain the retirement process at an airline, how he has handled the transition, and, if we're lucky enough, he'll tell us about some of the highlights from his illustrious journey in aviation. Captain Keith Wolzinger will be joining us today, so stay tuned as we run our final checks and prepare for pushback from the gate. Flight 139 of the Squawk Ident Podcast is officially underway. Joining us today is a superb aviator and Squawk Ident co-host. He is a former international and professional racquetball champion, a member of the 9G Club, an A&P and avionics tech, an RC aircraft commander, a boat skipper, a commercial drone operator, and currently an Airbus captain for Legacy Airlines. The name we use here on the show is an alias to our employer, a U.S. mainline carrier. Joining us from his podcast studio in Flower Mound, Texas. Help us in welcoming our very own Captain Rob D. Captain, how you doing?
Hey, Captain, I'm doing good. Good to be back, ready to get the show on the road or in the air.
Yes, fantastic. It's been a while. It's been over a month since our last recording.
Yeah.
We've all been very busy. We have our group text thread that we go on for our Squawk Ident crew members, and everyone like, hey, can we record a podcast this week? You think? Yeah. Who's available? And
the logistics for this show is crazy. And you're the one that kind of puts it all together. So
yeah. It's been crazy.
All the prompts go to you.
Well, thank you. And yeah, I've been partly to blame.
To be here.
Well, yeah, I'm just happy to be here too. I'm partly to blame for that too, because we're going to hear a little bit about what I've been up to lately, and cool. I can't believe. I mean, my coffee intake has skyrocketed, gentlemen. I'm doing triple shot espressos now, cold foam cream top, and oh my god!
Whoa!
And I took 2 weeks vacation. I actually left the country, so
did you?
Yeah. Well,
wow.
I took my mother with me to Tirana, where I was born, because she has family there. I have family there. We went to go see my aunts and uncles and her cousins, and yeah, it was fun.
Oh,
it was fun.
That's good.
That's not leaving the country.
Oh yeah, Canada is a totally other country. Yeah. Ask any Canadian what they think of America.
Yeah, it's just a loft party over a really good apartment. Okay, that's all it is.
Yeah, well, right.
Just a loft apartment over a really good party. Okay,
well, that's pretty much all of Toronto. Yeah, you've said it. Well, speaking of, you've heard his voice, and now let's introduce him. Also joining us today is an outstanding aviator and Squawk Ident co-host. He is a former U.S. Navy Reserve Chief Information Systems Technician, a certified flight instructor, and an Embraer 175 pilot for Pipper Regional. New title, we're going to talk about this, Pilot Recruiter. Hello. Yes. God help you guys. Joining us after a day from the corporate grind and interviews from his home somewhere in Justin, Texas. Please help us in welcoming to the show our very own Mr. Alex D. Alex, how you doing?
Like Rob, I'm just happy to be here. Like our group chat just, hey, can we record this week? No. It's just been kind of a blessing that like we could get 2 of us, let alone 3 of us together to do a podcast. So,
no, it's been crazy, and I do appreciate your time and the effort that all of you put in. We spoke to Kyle and Roger this morning, and Terry as well. Terry thought maybe he could join, but he's out there flying the line, doing his international wide body flying. Terry. And Roger as well, very busy right now. He's actually flying as well. And Kyle, I believe, is starting a trip or finishing a trip today. So, yeah, all of us have just been crazy busy. And I do understand for those listeners out there that have been sending me messages and emails, when are you going to do another show? Come on, man. We're waiting for you. I just can't tell you how much.
We have guys guys out there like that.
we have some, yeah, and I'm very appreciative. We actually have some audio feedback as well that we'll play at the end of the show.
2 listeners, yeah,
or all 5. Cool. Well, hey, we got 5. We got 5 listeners. That's all good. They're very.
It's down to 3 now since we're barely recording.
Yeah, it's true, and they're very loyal. Thanks, Mom. It's all awesome. Yeah. Well, a little update on what I've been up to and why I've been so busy. As the listeners know that have been following the show, I was very fortunate earlier in the year that I was awarded an upgrade, and it only took 5.5 years at a mainline carrier. And like Rob, who went before me, gave me all his cliff notes and the gouge. Thank you, Rob. It was very helpful. And we, had to go through this, right? And we all have to go through this at some point. It's an honor to do it. And you think that just because you're sat in the right seat as a first officer and for years, and you feel that you know your aircraft, you know the policies and procedures, and you think you're ahead of the plane, and every once in a while you'll fly with a really sharp captain and you'll be like, oh yeah, I like that. I'm going to pick that up. I'm going to start doing that for when I upgrade. And then occasionally you'll fly with a captain that's like, what the heck? How the heck did you get here? And then you're like, I'm not going to do that when I upgrade. Well, here I am. I've gone through the training. It was a very long process. It wasn't arduous. It was just time consuming to study, to get the flows right. And we were talking in the pre-show that I was doing all these flows as a first officer, and I kind of just, I got it done. I knew what needed to be done. I'd sit here and check. I did one flow, and maybe we were missing a fuel slip, or maybe they hadn't catered us yet, or maybe we were waiting on a logbook. So I would do a modified flow, and I'd come back and I just, do my thing. But times have changed through our AQP program, and because we have so much new training going on, people upgrading, new hires coming in, people from different backgrounds, people from different ages. We talked about this recently on the last show about professionalism and how do you operate in a flight deck where you have a 40+ year age gap between you and the pilot next to you. Sometimes some communication barriers are there organically, and you have to recognize them and get past them. So these are all the things that we have developed, and especially with the flows and the checklist, they really want you to do each flow independently now, not all together, as long as it gets done, all the things you've heard over 20+ years of flying with AQP and training and requalifications. And now they want us to do things more by the book. Don't put anything extra in there. If there's a comma, there should be a pause. If there's the word and, you can use the word and. If the word and is not in the checklist, don't say park and brake on and set. I actually was told, excuse me, there's no and in that. Verbatim. And I was like, okay, sorry. Parking brake on, check. And this is how kind of stickler they've become in the training department lately. And it all has to do with, we want you to be as close to SOP when we release you out onto the world, because you're going to be flying with so many people that have done this short course training that we want you to be able to spend the time mentoring and polishing the stone versus just trying to get a sharp edge on that knife. So it's been a very interesting transition for me. It took a lot of time out of my life. I've got some other things going on with remodeling, and I was slotted to go to France for the XLR program for the Airbus. I was one of 4 pilots picked with the company to go to Toulouse for a week, and I found out recently that I am the backup captain, and which makes sense because as terms of sitting in the airplane, I have a lot of time on the Neo, which is what the requirement was, but I didn't have a lot of time in the left seat. So they sent a obviously more qualified captain that's going to be leaving here in a week to go to France for this program, and I'm the backup. So if anything happens to this guy, whoever it is, they won't tell me. Smart move. If anything happens to them, then I'll get the phone call and go, hey, we need you on a flight to France tomorrow. Can you do it? So that's where I sit with that. The other thing is I've signed up to be a cadet program mentor. So I'll be joining Kyle in the ranks of individuals that will be going to flight schools that are associated with the Legacy Airlines cadet program. And I'll be talking to young individuals on a weekly basis and occasionally having some meet and greets. And so it'll be interesting. Really, that's the whole point of this podcast, right? To talk about the journey of today's aviator and tell stories about what we do here on the mainline side of things. Because really, for the most part, most people, this is where they want to end up. So that's what I've been up to. Not much. Just chilling. And I just again want to reiterate thank you again to all of you out there for being patient for the show. I know there was a time where we had one a week, but yeah, once a month it's probably going to be the normal for a little while anyway, maybe until the next season, and then we can start ramping things up again. But we want to hear about it too. Are you okay out there as a listener? Listening to the show once a month, or would you rather shorter shows with more frequency? I know that's where direction we were going before I got the upgrade schedule. So we want to hear back from you. So make sure you send us some feedback. But enough about that. Very excited today to reintroduce a former guest from Flight 111. And that's when we learned what it was like out there on the line flying a wide body. We've had updates from our next guest. He was sending us videos from his layovers where we got to enjoy the walkabouts that he took all over Europe and around the world. And we are just so appreciative to have him here with us today. So let me introduce our featured guest. He is a now retired wide-body captain and a podcaster and film producer. His journey in aviation dates back to the year 1980 when he graduated from San Jose State University with the Bachelor's of Science in Aeronautics, Aviation, Aerospace Science, and Technology. He furthered his education at USC, where he earned a Master's of Science in Aviation Safety. He also has a degree in digital media. Makes sense. He is a consultant at Eon Reality and the VP of Renzone, a digital media, analytics, and higher education company. He is also the host and creator of the Klezmer podcast, which highlights klezmer and Jewish musical artists from around the world. He first joined us, as we mentioned, on Flight 111, The Long Haul Rhythm, back on the 8th of June, 2022. He joins us again today to talk about his recent experiences going through the retirement process at Legacy Airlines. Please help me in welcoming back to the show, Captain Keith Wolzinger. Captain, how you doing?
Hi, Tony. Hi, everybody. Doing pretty good today. I just got back from playing some tennis, so life goes on, actually, after retirement. So just not so many trips to the airport.
Yeah. And that's got to be one of the most curious transitions for us line pilots out there. We all talk about the retirement date, age 65. Lately, a lot of the news has been revolving around age 67 and maybe even age 70 coming. A lot of the questions I've asked some of the people I've had the privilege to interview over the last few years is, would you stay if they changed it to 67 or longer? And let me ask you, if tomorrow they say, hey, you know what? They just passed a law. You can go to age 67 in 364 days. Would you come back?
That's a tough question. There's a lot of interest in doing that. But at the same time, it's been 38 years, and I feel like it's time for somebody else to take over, like you guys. The old saying, congratulations on retiring, I'll get out of my seat, that holds true. That's been from the dawn of aviation since they invented captains. And I think it's still true today. Now, there's life after airline retirement. There's other flying that can still be done. Mm-hmm. And I'm exploring those options and looking forward to the next step in the career.
Yeah, so you're not done with flying, is what I'm hearing.
No, I figure as long as I can still pass the physical and as long as I can still pass the check ride and find the airport, I'll keep going as long as it's fun.
Oh, yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And I'm glad to hear that. I've flown with a few people lately. And of course, one of the topics of conversation, especially on those transcons, you sit there for 4, 5, 6 hours and you got to have something to talk about. So, I like to poke the bear sometimes and say, so are you going to fly after you retire? And I'm surprised how many pilots actually go, hell no, I don't want to be anywhere near an airplane or an airport after I retire. I am done. And I'm always surprised by that. Has that always been your reaction as well? Like, why would you want to stop doing what you love?
Well, a lot of people don't love it. So I've found a lot of people only went into aviation as a career without the first step of the recreational aspect of it. So a lot of people, and you guys have seen this, a lot of people don't have a recreational interest in flying or an interest in flying something that's not airlines. So, and that's fine. Those people, they want to buy their motorhome and go cruise the country, or do nothing, buy a sailboat and go sail around the world, or whatever. As long as it doesn't involve an airplane or an airport, they're quite happy. Those of us that basically grew up with aviation and with a love of anything that flies, and who never got out of airplane flying outside of the airlines. I've always kept up general aviation interests. I've always kept my CFI current. I've always gone flying at whatever opportunity I've had outside of the airline.
Yeah.
And that hasn't changed. I've been flying a Bonanza in the 5 weeks that I've been retired and been having a great time. So that hadn't changed. Only the airline side of it has changed. So it's more of a shift to other kinds of flying, and looking forward to seeing where I fit in that new job market. So there's a lot of exploring to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that can be both exciting, I think, and daunting as well, because there's a lot of GA flying out there, a lot of corporate flying out there to be had, especially with the youngsters that are in corporate and they stay there a few years. And the second carrier will call them, they're like, I'm out. That's my goal. So I would imagine that with all the hiring that's happening, there should be some open opportunities for a pilot with as much experience as you have to be gobbled up by this corporate operator and say, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not afraid of you leaving us in a few months to go to a bigger and better. You just want to fly. So the opportunity,
right. Well,
it's exciting.
That's an interesting point, because there are some out there that are looking for retired airline people, as you point out, to have some stability in their operation, and people that are going to jump at the next available opportunity. On the other hand, there's a bit of a stigma with airline retirees in the non-airline world that makes it a little bit harder to make the transition, because of some assumptions as to what the expectations of those pilots that are former airline people would have in the non-airline sector. So
yeah,
there's as Captain Roger has pointed out, there's no dispatch, there's no load planners, there's no weather department. A lot of those things are done by the crew. So some people are easy with making that transition and going back basically to what I would consider my roots, or some people find that as too much of a task to take on and aren't willing to stick that out for very long.
Yeah.
So there's two sides to that. And, if the stigma can be overcome, there's a lot of opportunity out there. The other thing is that a lot of places are looking for type ratings on the equipment they're flying, or hours in those airplanes. And coming from just the airline side with a Boeing or Airbus or a Douglas type rating, that in some cases doesn't buy you a lot of credibility or street cred, whatever, in the world of the smaller jets.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a navigational hurdle, but it's an exciting time, I think.
Yeah. And thank you for mentioning Captain Roger. I was just going to mention that, he and I have had this conversation many times. I've flown with plenty of captain over the years that they're already looking forward to, hey, I'm going to retire in 6 months and I really want to fly corporate, but because I mentioned that I have a friend who is the director of flight ops. Can you get me a job? And Roger's always mentioned to me that both of what you've said, the pros and cons of looking for work post-retirement is in many aspects, you have, if a pilot truly does love flying and loves the job and has the professionalism that's required to stay safe out there, then yeah, absolutely. You want to hire somebody with all that experience. And at the same time, a corporate operator might look at that and go, well, they want to be spoon-fed all, like you said, there is no dispatch, there is no weather reporting. You have to do that, right? And you have to go back to your GA world and what you were doing when you were building hours. But now we have all these apps like ForeFlight, and we have a weather apps, and everything's on a tablet. And even your ADS-B is your traffic, your TCAS is on your tablet when you're flying GA. So you would think that aspect of the pilot that is, retired and now wants to continue to fly corporate, and they don't want to do the work, a lot of that work has been minimized by the technology that's available today. So you would think that that's no longer as big a deal as it used to. Well, certainly. And those apps you mentioned are pretty much in common with what we've had at the airline. So in that regard, it's pretty similar. So it's just the scheduling, the operation, the randomness of the assignments. Yeah. That kind of dictates, the way they operate. So it's a little bit like, being on reserve a little bit more of the time. Yeah. And some of it's scheduled. So, it's all over, and I'm still exploring that. So I've had some interest. I've had one job offer, one exploratory interview, and somebody reached out to me just this week already to look at something else. So it's an interesting time, and the hard part is to find something that fits the retiree mindset, and at the same time, I want to be giving back to the industry because there's a lot of new people coming through, and it's guaranteed that I'll be flying with lower time individuals that are, like you say, looking to get to the airline at some point. So it's important to give them a good foundation for whatever their career steps take them in the future. So that's a really important part of whatever comes up in the next phase. So it's fun, it's challenging, it's daunting, but we're going to be looking at a lot of things. So there's going to be something out there where I'm going to fit in, I'm sure. Absolutely. And I look forward to hearing about it. I'm sure you'll keep us updated. We really do appreciate all your updates that you've sent us over the years. And if you're just joining us and you're like, well, who's Tony talking to right now? Captain Keith has been on our show a multitude of times. The first time that we had a full show dedicated to him was Flight 111, as we mentioned in the intro. If you haven't heard it, or maybe you're just joining the show as a listener and you haven't gone back to the archives and listened to the other shows that we put on, this is episode 139, so there's plenty of shows. The first 10 or 15, you could probably skip because those were the early days of my podcasting. I'm still proud of them, but some of the shows have been absolutely riveting with some amazing guests. You absolutely are there with us, and you told us all about how you started your career, how you ended up being a wide body captain. So I highly encourage you listeners out there that if you haven't already heard episode 111, go back and you'll hear all about Keith and his journey and how he started and how much he has to give back to the community, the aviation community. We were talking about 40 plus year age gaps. And let me tell you, as a young person who started out not knowing anything about aviation other than I like airplanes, I was reliant on getting to know people that have been in the industry a while, flying with people and asking them questions, not just sitting there and, looking at the USA Today and reading the article and saying, "Hey, are you going to do the Sudoku on that one? Can I do that one? You want to do the crossword puzzle? Because I don't know words that good." So,
what's the USA Today?
Yeah, that was called a newspaper, Alex. They used to have one for free in the lobby of every hotel. So you'd get up in the morning, you go get your free coffee, you'd grab this thing called a newspaper. The ink smelled fantastic, got all over your fingers. And then when you're out on the flight line and you're cruising, and autopilot's on, you're at 37,000 feet, you pull that thing out, and we called it FM3, right? Flight Manual Part 3. And we would sit there and we would read and we would trade sections. You're like, "Hey, you got the sports section? Let me see that." Yeah. Come on, Alex. Come on. So.
Oh, I know. I was just giving you shit. Please. The stories of my dad, with FM3 open across the windscreen at 37,000 feet while he's reading, doing the same thing that you're saying. Hey, you going to do the crossword in that? Let me have a crossword.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, "Hey, Legacy 123, traffic, 12 o'clock, 1,000 feet above, passing by a 737, looking." Hey, you got that entertainment section? But I digress. Yeah. So yeah, you have so much to offer, Captain, and I'm really looking forward to hearing about your progression and what's next for you. What we wanted to really highlight today is your transition from being a line pilot to retirement and now the future, what's coming. At what point did you realize that your line flying career at Legacy was slowly coming to an end? Was it, years prior that you started to feel it, or was it something that happened kind of the last second? It didn't really hit you until it was happening.
Well, I really was noticing from about the last 2 years. So I said, well, shoot, I have 2 years to go, and there's some places that I wanted to fly to that I hadn't been yet. So over the last 2 years, I was doing a lot of dropping my trips at my home base and picking up trips in other bases. That was a really cool feature of our earlier contract. Mm-hmm. So I got to fly with all the crews from all the bases and fly to a lot of the places that I wanted to get to. And I've sent you some of the videos from those adventures. Yeah. So there was a lot of things that I had an opportunity to do that I wouldn't have had if I'd only flown the trips that were assigned at our base. But then it got down to 1 year, and then 6 months, and my last trip through CQT, and my last time leaving the simulator building, and the last time, a lot of last times of a lot of things. The last breakfast burrito.
You remember all that stuff,
yeah,
right? And then it got down to about 3 months, and then I'm really starting to think of the places that I hadn't been. I used all of my vacation, so I had vacation from the beginning of June through the first week of July. So we did some vacationing. I went to the Paris Air Show.
Oh, wow.
A lot of things that wanted to get done that were happening in that time frame that I wouldn't have been able to do if I'd been flying a full schedule.
Right.
So then in July, I flew 4 trips out of Kennedy. I flew to Barcelona, Delhi, Athens, and Paris. So nothing out of the West Coast. And then in August, really was more of a retirement month rather than a final trip. I did 3 trips. The first one on premium, so I got that last premium trip on 3 hours notice to go to London, by the way. So
impressive.
Yeah, it's like, okay, one more time. Let's do this. Yeah, and then the final 2 trips were also to London in earlier in August, and that was the more of the big deal because I had the family and my one of my best friends from college and his wife that went, and they went on my first of those last 2 trips over, and they all wanted to spend 5 days. So they didn't want to just go and have a 20-hour layover and fly back. So they all went my trip over, spent 5 days. So I flew back, had a day off, and then flew out to London again, and then brought everybody home on my final flight.
Wow.
So
wow.
We can talk a little bit more about that, but that was really the highlight, and everything went fantastically. I can talk a little bit more in length in between whatever questions you have about that.
Okay. Yeah, I know that it's always been so varied. You know, you talk to people on the flight deck, and I've flown with a few pilots that have had a countdown timer on their phone, and they're like, "Oh yeah, let's check it out. There's 1,517 hours before, whatever, but and before I retire."
They used to count the number of bid sheets left.
Bid sheets, yeah.
I have 17 bid sheets left.
Yeah. And others are like, I don't even want to think about it. And then, I ask them, are you going to do the water cannon salute? Are you going to do the whole final flight thing and the cake and the party? And I'm like, nah. And then a lot of them call out sick for their last flight. I'm like, what? I don't get that. I don't. For me, it should be like a huge celebration, because how many millions of lives have you been in charge of?
I will tell you a funny thing. So that my last 2 trips, the first one where everybody was going with me on my flight standards did call me and ask me if I'd like to be displaced for somebody wanted to buy a trip.
Yeah.
So I could have stayed home and not done the trip, but I said, hey, look, I'm retiring. All my family is on this trip.
Right.
I'd really like to fly it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God, can't believe it.
But I could have checked that last box too of getting displaced one more time.
Yeah. That's my last displacement. Oh man.
Yeah, the last displacement.
Yeah. Well, I'm really happy for you. You had reached out to me and told me, hey, this is going to be my final flight in LAX. And, I was flying. Otherwise, I would have found that a very fun day to be a part of. Now, did you do the whole water cannon salute and everything and have...
Well, we did the cannon salute. It was not the water cannon salute because at LAX, they no longer do the water portion of that.
Really?
I think... I'm not sure what it is. Somebody told me it's like environmental concerns from the county or something to that effect. But
wow,
the last arrival was it was after sunset, so it was nighttime already. But the 2 fire trucks met me on the taxiway and had all their lights on, really pretty.
Cool.
A lot of flashing red lights, and they got on the radio and congratulated me on the career and wished me a happy retirement.
Wow.
It was a very nice thing for the Los Angeles Airport Fire Authority people to do.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that very much. But let me back up a little bit. When I left on that first trip, that's when we had a bit of a celebration in the LAX flight office, and our union family awareness and Finney flight organizers organized a little reception, and everybody had some cupcakes and meetings with the flight department people.
Nice.
So it was a nice send off to get that trip started. And then on the way back in London operations, when I went to go check the paperwork, they had the most giant retirement cake I've ever seen.
Wow.
Wow.
I can send you guys a photo of that if you didn't see it already in some fashion. But it took like 2 people to carry this cake on up to the aircraft, and it was probably enough cake for everyone on board. It's
nice.
The biggest thing I've ever seen.
Wow.
It's impressive.
everybody decorated the gate where we departed, decorated the aircraft.
Very cool.
And it was
that's awesome.
a really nice thing from start to finish. We called for our IFR clearance from Heathrow delivery.
Mm-hmm.
And the controller at the Heathrow delivery read a little congratulatory message. It's your final clearance to Los Angeles, and congratulations on retiring. That was also very nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
When we were over the North Atlantic, the controllers sent us a ACARS message congratulating me. When I was over Canada, I had free texted the controller mentioning that this was my last flight and to thank the NAV Canada for all the years of handling all the flights that I've been on. And they responded with a very nice ACARS message congratulating me on my retirement.
Wow.
Then when I got to the U.S. border, every controller that we spoke to, when they handed us off to the next controller, congratulated me on retiring.
Wow.
So that was really cool. When I got to talking to Denver Center, the controller said from Denver, cleared direct to Los Angeles Airport. And then he said, I know that probably won't hold for you all the way to Los Angeles, but I'm going to clear you for it.
Cool.
So whoever that controller is, if you're listening to this podcast, that was the most fun thing any controller's ever told me.
That is so cool to hear. Congratulations on behalf of all of us here. And Alex had to leave in the middle of the podcast. He has a back to school night with his children tonight, so he had to abruptly take off. So you won't be hearing Alex for the rest of the show. We've been talking to Captain Keith about his retirement, and Rob actually is going to be with us only for a few more minutes. So we're going to hear more about Captain Keith, and we're going to hear about Rob's recent in-flight diversion right after the break. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back from the break. Well, we've been really enjoying hearing about the retirement process from Captain Keith. Rob is going to be taking off here pretty soon as well. He's got, you guessed it, I'll give you one guess, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think Rob has to do this evening with his, I'll give you a hint, children?
Can't be volleyball, is it?
You know what? I think you're right, Rob. I think you have to go to volleyball practice and take the kids.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I hear you. You are one of the most dedicated volleyball parents. But as I've learned over the years, every single person that I meet that has a child in volleyball, it has to be one of the most arduous and time-consuming schedules that any parent in sports can have. That is amazing how much time you've dedicated to getting the kids where they needed to go, going across the country, taking flights, taking road trips for volleyball. And you know what? It's paid off because now, you got
it's all been worth it.
Jordan's in college, and pretty soon, you're going to have two in college. So
I have two in college, empty nesters. Yeah, you're right, man.
Yeah.
Just multiply it by two. But it's been totally worth it.
Yeah.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. It's fun to watch them grow through the sport, and to go on and play the game at the college level is, couldn't ask for more.
Yeah. Now you're a lucky man, and you and your wife, I'm sure, are just beaming with pride. I can tell by your social media presence. Let's just put it that way. But Rob, I wanted, in the pre-show, we were talking about what we've been up to, and I just, before you need to go, can you just give us a little background on what you recently had to do? You were a captain of a flight.
Yeah.
From, what was it, Miami to somewhere?
Yeah, we're Orlando to Phoenix.
Or Orlando to Phoenix. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice little flight. What happened?
Orlando to Phoenix. Yeah. So here I am in the 5th month of the left seat, and just starting to really, hit my stride right now. At least I feel that way. We go through the pre-flight, had four great flight attendants, as most of our flights are are filled with just great professionals and great working coworkers back there. So went through a good pre-flight briefing and talked about the flight and everything. And we got to the portion where, hey, we're scheduled to have breakfast on this flight. So, I know you got first class passengers to feed and stuff like that, but, appreciate you can get to us as soon as you're done with them. And they're like, okay, sounds good. So we launch off out of Orlando at like 7:00 in the morning, and there was a little bit of weather over the Gulf, so they sent us over the Panhandle, and we reached we were being like Tallahassee, and we get the call from the flight attendant, and I'm like, all right, cool, it's breakfast time. Look over here. What do you want to drink? Coffee, orange juice. We're like, okay, yeah, we got it all. So all right, you're a craft, your radios. All right, so I pick up the call, and the flight attendants, hey, we got a code red back here. We got a male passenger who's unconscious right now, non-responsive. We have a medical physician that's on board that's attending to the individual. He seems to be slowly coming back, but right now he's unresponsive. I need the POC. I need the dispatcher's
desk number. Yeah,
number again. I was like, well, yeah, I gave that to during the brief, but yeah, it's 11 desk 11. And I'm like, all right, don't forget your take out your MEAS sheet out of your grab and go kit. Update me as soon as possible, and rely on your training, and try to take a breather. You guys are doing great. Call me back here in 5-10 minutes if you can. They're like, okay. So immediately I come back. I'm like, we're not eating breakfast. We got a medical emergency in the back. Start thinking of a medical diversion we can go to. Right now I'm looking at New Orleans is, probably the best as we progress through. I think New Orleans is probably the best area so far from here. Maybe Fort Walton Beach or Pensacola, but so just open up the FOM, hit emergencies, and just started going through the checklist and making sure that we did everything we were supposed to do. Flight attendant calls me back and says, Captain, we were talking with the POC, and they want us to call them back in 20 minutes with the latest blood pressure, heart rate, and their overall assessment of the passenger.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, sounds good. So 20 minutes go by. They call me back and they said, okay, they've had 3 more episodes in the last 20 minutes. The physician back here is adamant about us diverting. What do you want to do? I was like, well, I'd like to divert too, but let's get the physician on call on board with this and the dispatcher, and we'll make the decision then. So meanwhile, at that time, we're kind of already pressing past like New Orleans I don't think New Orleans wasn't out of the picture, but we were still kind of making our way through the central part of the country. And I went to go call the POC and the dispatcher through our phone app that we have. But would you know, the internet wasn't working at that particular point in time. So I'm like, this just complicates things just a little bit more. So I'm like, you know what? Let me just text message him real quick via ACARS, tell him that I'm going to try to establish contact and update him via ACARS. So just as I finished typing my 2-page sentence on ACARS, which felt like an eternity, but it probably took like a minute, the internet pops back on. So I'm like, well, I'm going to send it anyway, but I'm just going to try to get on the call again. And so we got on the call, got the physician on board, and we went back and forth with information and everything. And ultimately, the decision was made to divert into Dallas. So we ended up diverting into Dallas, got that passenger the medical attention that they deserved, and proceeded to fill out the AML, the logbook, with all the overweight landing information and, grabbing enhanced medical kit being used and oxygen bottles being used. And, so all that stuff had the plane recatered. We didn't need fuel because we had ferry fuel. And it was a lot going on there at the gate. But I'm proud to say that we turned that airplane in 40 minutes.
Wow.
With the maintenance inspection and everything. So I think everybody was just, I think it comes down to that communication, thing we keep talking about through training and everything. I made sure that, the dispatcher and MOC knew that we're going to be overweight landing. We're going to need 2 oxygen bottles, in-flight medical kits being used. So, if we can just show up, have that stuff ready to roll, that'll expedite the process instead of them just showing up going, what's going on?
Yeah.
So
it gets busy.
I think,
anytime you're doing anything.
Yeah, I was pretty busy.
That's like that, a medical emergency or diversion of any kind, even if it's weather related, it gets busy because now you're not just sitting there following the lines. You're not coloring inside the lines here, just doing your flows and your checklists on schedule, top of descent, that kind of thing. Now you're completely changing course. You're no longer on those rails per se. Now you have to completely plot your new plan of action, and that means you now have to coordinate at minimum. Not that you have to do it all yourself. You have a team behind you. I mean, we've seen these, the company has put out these videos now for SOC, Systems Operation Control. And the videos are very informative because a lot of times you think you're the only ones out there and you're on your own out here, but that's not the case. You have a teams of people that are like, hey, did you hear about Flight 11? It's going here, it's going there, or Flight 17, whatever. So you have all these people looking out for you, and all you have to do sometimes is just go, I want this, or I want that. I need to be catered. They burnt my biscuits in the oven because they were dealing with the medical. I want new biscuits. They will get them to you. Right. And it's a good thing we were talking about that. It's a good thing you went to Dallas instead of New Orleans, because the services you would have probably received in New Orleans was going to be very limited. Yeah, you probably weren't going to get catering and contract maintenance.
The challenges would have been like probably the oxygen bottles would have been the big thing. Mm-hmm. If they didn't have any oxygen bottles there, that's something that you can't, from what I know, you can't fly them in because they're oxygen. They're in bottles. I think they actually have to be driven in. But I think most stations keep supplies of those things. But
or contractor,
you never know. I mean,
close
I was
to the airport or something.
Yeah, I was in a situation 2-3 months ago where I think we were flying out of Des Moines, and the flight was delayed for close to 12 to 15 hours because they had to drive in oxygen bottles from Chicago. Nobody had any oxygen bottles. So, obviously, we want to get the passenger to the medical attention they need and get them on the ground as quickly as we can. But, by the time it all evolved, Dallas was the best place to go.
Yeah. And can you imagine being a passenger like that and you're like, oh, I paid for a ticket from Orlando to somewhere in Phoenix, and I ended up in Dallas. Now I'm at a hospital in Dallas, and your family's like, where are you?
The crazy thing is I think we were only like 45 minutes to an hour late in the Phoenix, which, that could have been way worse than that, because I think we were already like 20-30 minutes early just by the way they overblock these things. We were supposed to be 20-30 minutes early as it was. So it went, as smoothly as I feel like it could have ever went, You're in
a 321?
So, yeah.
Yeah, so 170 passengers up, unless it's a Neo, then up to 200, I think, or 190.
Yeah, it was a Neo. Yeah, I think we had 198 or something like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a lot of people to try to accommodate, and you're only getting like 1 or 2 people off the airplane for the medical issue, but then, everybody's like, am I going to make my connection?
Yeah, that was definitely the concern, and there was a passenger.
Hey, is that guy going to be okay?
Right on the. There was definitely people that were talking about, and that was the other challenging thing was, and I looked in the FM1 or I keep calling the FM1 FOM.
That's old school.
And there's no real good guidance on what kind of a PA to make in that kind of situation, so you kind of have to just formulate one together. And, that's part of the job. Yeah. And I think I did a pretty good one. But, at the end, I was like, okay. And, secondly, I'm sure everybody's wondering about their connections and everything like that. And I said, that is secondary to this person's medical attention right now. But, I'm sure what we're going to probably do is have a customer service agent meet us at the gate, and we'll be able to, anybody's concerned about their connections. After we get the medical thing taken care of, we could talk to the service agent and progress from there. But the plan is for us to turn the airplane and get it to Phoenix as quickly but as safely as possible. So,
well, good job.
That's how it went.
Doing your captaining. Fantastic job. Yeah. I'm proud to hear that everything went so well, and only 45 minutes late. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me jump in here a second too, because I also got to check that medical emergency box last month.
Really?
Well, I got one more before I retired as well.
Wow. Wow. One more. And all the SIRS reports that come after it too.
So, Rob, you got your first one. You're gonna have a few more before you retire.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just a few.
Well, hey, Tony, Keith, I gotta go. My wife is hey, we gotta go. So, hey, Kat, congratulations on your retirement, Captain. I wish you all the best, and look forward to hearing some more interesting stories along the way.
Yeah, hopefully I'll have some more interesting things to tell you guys. So,
yes, sir.
Good talking to you, Rob.
Congrats.
We look forward to it. And Rob, thank you so much for sharing your story with us, and make sure your daughter's volleyball team kicks some serious butt today.
Yeah, it's a big game today, so we got to take out the crosstown rivalry. So we're going to go head out there now.
Go represent.
Cheer them on.
Thanks,
brother.
Rob.
All right, take care. See ya.
Bye.
And then there were two.
Now, Rob just told us all about his medical divert. It was his first sitting in the left seat at a mainline carrier. Now, you've had, I'm sure, hundreds of these kind of situations over the years. You just mentioned your last medical divert, the last one I'll ever have to do, at least at the airline.
The first one, and you have a last one.
The first and the last. You never forget those, right? But you probably have had some pretty major, diversions for things that were beyond the usual. What was the craziest divert you ever had?
Well, there's two. One was a mechanical. One was weather. Well, actually, the weather. A few other ones, but the mechanical one was on an MD-80 from the West Coast to Chicago, and we got about the vicinity of Albuquerque, and we noticed the left engine oil quantity decreasing.
Ooh.
And the first reaction is, oh, that's odd.
Mm-hmm.
And is it the gauge? Is it really happening? And so we monitored it a little bit, and it was continuing to decrease. So we decided to divert into Denver, and told them, the controllers, our situation. So we diverted to Denver, and of course they gave us the slam dunk because they're trying to be helpful. And of course we were a little bit too high, so we had to go around. We had that engine throttled back to try to reduce the oil loss, which was a good thing, as it turned out. Where the oil leak was, we found out after we landed. But anyway, we did a go around in Denver. Then they brought us around for the crossing runway and made an uneventful landing there. Turned off the runway and did a normal shutdown on that engine, single engine taxi the remainder of the time to the gate. So we didn't have an in-flight shutdown. It was a normal shutdown, even though the oil quantity was showing very close to zero. But after we landed is when we got actually a indicator light for that. So we did the normal shutdown, taxi to the gate, apologized to the passengers for the disruption of their travel plans.
Yeah.
Maintenance came out. They had to change one of the lines on the oil system. Fortunately, it was the oil pump at just one of the lines. So they replaced that and filled up with oil, test ran it. We're out of there in about 90 minutes and back on our way to Chicago. So
wow.
That worked out really well.
Yeah, I'd say.
The funny diversion for weather one time, we were going from DFW. We're supposed to stop in Norfolk, Virginia, and then continue on to Richmond. Well, Norfolk had fogged in and they were below minimums. And I'm talking to dispatch. They wanted me to divert to, at that time, Raleigh was one of our hubs. So they wanted to go to Raleigh so that they could reaccommodate the passengers. And I told them, well, but we're going to Norfolk and then Richmond. So all of our passengers are going to Norfolk or Richmond, one or the other. Why don't we just go to Richmond and then maybe bus the people back over to Norfolk? And so they thought that was an okay idea. So we diverted to Richmond, which made the Richmond people happy because they were going to get there sooner. Mm-hmm. And we landed in Richmond, and then we were told we had to wait for a gate. Mm-hmm. So we went to the holding area, and I saw from where we were sitting that their gate was vacant. There was nothing there. But they told us to wait, so we waited in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, checked with them again. We have to wait a little bit longer. The gate's not available. I'm looking at a vacant gate. So I finally said, why are we waiting for this now vacant gate? So, well, we're waiting for this inbound flight from Norfolk to arrive before you can use the gate. So, well, we're going to be waiting a very long time because that's us.
Oh, shit.
So I said, why don't you get us a gate? So,
yeah, those
kinds of things can happen because they're going to wait for that flight to come in from Norfolk no matter what. So,
right.
Got that straightened out. We got to the gate. They bused the people back to Norfolk that were going there. So,
yeah,
that was a funny one.
Yeah, I've had a very similar situation. I think I mentioned it probably a good dozen years ago in Chicago. You're going to go to the holding pad. Okay. What gate are we waiting for? Whatever. G7. Okay. What are we waiting on? We're waiting for the crew to show up so that they can fly that airplane off the gate and then you can park there. I'm like, what's the flight number? Going to be a problem. I'm the crew that's supposed to fly that one out. So give me another gate. And oh, crap.
I had that exact same situation in Chicago, too.
Yeah. Yeah. Chicago sometimes is just, they do their best with what they're given. And, no disrespect to the Chicago operations team there. I've, been flew in and out of there for over a decade. And they sometimes are trying to make something valuable out of nothing. But yeah, that happens a lot in Chicago, especially when they do the first come, first serve nightmare because of the lack of gate space. And yeah. So, okay. So you've had some interesting diversions over the years, and we've talked about your transition to retirement. Do you look back and now more than ever and just regale the stories of all the cool things that you've experienced over the years, or is that not quite hit you yet?
Well, there's certainly a lot of reflection on what opportunities I've had and what challenges I've had. So it's been a lot more fun than challenging. But as a career, I wouldn't have traded that for anything. It's always a challenge, even on a nice day of good weather and everything's on time and their airplane's in good shape. And you can just sit back and enjoy the scenery. Those times are great. Other times when there's a weather problem or medical problem or airport closed or something else that's come up, unexpected weather. Yeah, you just meet those challenges when they come up and do the best that you can. And sometimes you get to your destination. Sometimes it doesn't look like that's a good idea. But like you mentioned, you've got the IOC to back you up, and a whole team of people on the ground to give you tips. And now that we have onboard weather and all those functions that we didn't used to have, it's a lot easier to make those decisions in cooperation with all the people on the ground that are there helping you.
Yeah. Yeah, it really, it's kind of a weird statement. I've always heard flying has gotten easier over the years. Oh, don't you guys just push that takeoff, cruise, and land button? Well, it must be, some tough stuff. You guys don't actually land the airplane, right? And though there's truth to that misconception, that technology has definitely evolved and improved safety over the last few decades, especially at the airline level. But it doesn't mean that it's gotten easier. I think we now struggle to have more knowledge. Now we need to know how to use all this information and not get distracted or overwhelmed or complacent. And those are some of the struggles that a modern day pilot can expect. It's not having to learn how to navigate using LORAN navigation. It's having to juggle which app is appropriate to use, and do I have a Wi-Fi connection so I can actually use that app right now? But over the years, you've had, as you mentioned, more than 30 years out on the flight line. What has been, in your opinion, the biggest struggle for an airline pilot over the course of the last 3 decades?
Well, with the constant evolving of technology, things are always changing. And as you probably have seen, some people are more comfortable with technology. Some people are more, shall we say, old school, and sometimes resist the technology. So the people that embrace it are taking advantage of all the advances that the system has to offer us. So all of these things, from TCAS to EGPWS to ASDX to weather apps, it's all designed to make our job easier, reduce the task loading on the crew, and make more information available so we can make better decisions. Now, having said all that, there's been a lot of high-profile incidents in the last year that have made headlines and have made the FAA have the safety meetings from the industry to get feedback and input as to what to do about the current state of aviation safety. And as they pointed out from the FAA, that we still have a fantastic safety record and we want to keep that intact. But some of these incidents are poking around the edges of our safety record, and that's a little bit concerning. So what do you do about that?
Yeah.
They talk about over-reliance on technology, the children of the magenta line.
Mm-hmm.
So there has to be some more, I don't know if you can train it, but interest in the overall picture of what's happening to your airplane and what's happening in your airspace, because you have to be cognizant of not just what you're doing and what the controller is telling you to do, but what does the controller tell the airplane in front of you to do? And are you likely to be expecting the same clearance or the same change in routing because of the weather situation?
Yeah.
When you hear a controller give an aircraft advise ready to copy, have a reroute for you, advise ready to copy, and then he gives that same rerouting to 4 aircraft in a row, if you're number 4, you should be ready for that.
Right.
So there's a lot of need to be aware of, situational awareness, we used to call it.
Yep.
Now it's, a green, yellow, red, blue, whatever designation they want to come up with a program, but you can't replace the awareness of the airspace and the situation around you.
Yeah.
So when the busier the airspace gets, the more important that is, because you don't want to miss a clearance or misunderstand a clearance or take a clearance that was meant for another aircraft, or
right,
land when you're not supposed to, take off when you're not supposed to, turn when you're not supposed to, go to the wrong altitude.
Yeah.
These things are happening, And fortunately, we've got TCAS that's averted a few near misses already.
Yeah.
At or near airports. So while these things are concerned, there's new controllers as well, and I don't know about the experience level of the controllers these days, as well as the cockpits of the airliners. There's been the Learjet incident in Boston, so the business aviation is not immune to this.
Yeah.
GA stuff. It's a broad spectrum of issues that are facing us right now, and vigilance is the key to all of this.
Yeah, I think it's a spillover. And what I mean by that is, what you're saying is task saturation and a lack of situational awareness are the two key factors in the modern cockpit that can cause getting in the red, if we're gonna borrow a phrase or a terminology from the airline training environment. So, you're in the red.
Recognizing when you're in the red.
Right. So you're in the red, recognizing it, that's situational awareness, and then getting back to it. And that's really getting back to it usually involves a term that we haven't heard very often, or at least not as much, which is lowest level of automation. That's from a term from the Children of the Magenta Line, a very famous video from the early 2000s and late 90s. To be so reliant on the technology available to us that has made our jobs a little easier in terms of safety can task saturate us. You drive down any freeway in Southern California. If you don't look into the other vehicles, you're going to feel pretty confident about driving down the road. Everyone's staying in their lane. I'm doing 75 miles an hour, which is the unofficial speed limit on the freeways here. But if you start looking around and you see people, they're making TikTok videos while they're driving their car, and they're not paying attention because they're just doing things they're not supposed to be doing. And the reason that we feel confident in our abilities to do that is because the technology has become so easy to use. The platforms have become so second nature that it spills over onto the aviation side. This is the topic of our last show, was, how to keep professionalism in the profession. Now, I'm not trying to stand on any kind of soapbox and say, hey, pay attention to what you're doing, and you have to do everything black and white and follow the rules and stuff. But what I am saying is you want to have a long career, and you want to be able to retire at 65 and still have a valid license that you can go and fly and do what you love to do, go fly airplanes. You don't want something to jeopardize that. And this is a great topic, and thank you for sharing your thoughts on it. Task saturation and situational awareness are the two things that I think are most important, and that's what the FAA has been focusing on lately. That was the premise of the entire FAA summit that happened earlier in the year. It is why they're cracking down on distractions on the flight deck with cell phone and technology and Wi-Fi and all that stuff. We joke around about, well, we didn't have Wi-Fi. Well, what did you do before you had Wi-Fi? Are you telling me we didn't fly and airplanes were crashing into each other? Of course not. So, yeah, biggest struggle in aviation? Definitely SA.
Well, let me pose this to you, Tony. So you're a new captain, and let's say you make a mistake. And maybe you pick up on it right away. Maybe your FO picks up on it because you actually didn't know you made it. Maybe the controller tells you you made it. So what happens now, right? So you try to correct the mistake and then correct it as soon as you notice.
Sure.
And the whole idea, we all make mistakes, and mistakes are going to happen, and hopefully the results of that mistake are minimized. Now, here's another question. As a captain at the main line versus when you were a captain at the regional, what's the relative impact of making an error? I don't want to call it a mistake. We'll make it an error between the main line and when you were at the regional as a captain.
I think, well, what I've observed is it's the scale. that changes, not the mistake. If you turn down the wrong taxiway in an Embraer versus turning down the wrong taxiway in a 777, you've still turned down the wrong taxiway. You made an error, and we are all human, and we all make them. I made a recent error on a recent flight as sitting in the left seat during IOE. I made an error. The question is, if I made that error in a smaller jet or even a commercial or general aviation airplane, could I do a UE real quick and get back on? Okay, sure. So the scale of the error potentially could still be disastrous, but it might be a little easier to rectify. And there are less eyes on me, less people in the airplane on me. Nowadays, with technology and everybody's film studio that sits in their pocket, that's on all the time, recording in 4K high def, you make a mistake nowadays, especially at a mainline, the scale is bigger, meaning you can't just turn that airplane around. Now it's kind of a bigger deal. You got to go down another taxiway. Hopefully you didn't have a conflict with another airplane. Now they got to turn you around and you're back on it. So now you might want to file an ASAP report because maybe traffic was halted because you couldn't correct it easily. It's a bigger scale. And you have 200 plus people back there tweeting, "Oh my God, my captain just had a hard landing." Like when the United flight had that, it wasn't even a hard landing. It was just a kind of a more not so gentle landing. What was it in Santa Ana? And the gear came up through the strut, came up through the left wing. And I watched the video a bunch of times. We kind of talked about it on the show. It's not really what we do here, talk about accidents, but right away, every pilot I knew was like, "Oh man, did you see that hard landing that the United crew did?" I'm like, "Wait a minute, you don't know that. All you saw was it was raining, there was some weather, they landed, it didn't look that hard to me." Come to find out, the preliminary report from the NTSB was a structural failure caused by structural issues, not the pilot wasn't necessarily even considered a hard landing. It wasn't more than 1.5 Gs or something like that. Hard landing underweight, it's like 2.1. So within the limitations of the aircraft. So the pilots really didn't do anything incorrect. Sure, you can argue they could have gone around, they could have waited for the weather, but they were within their limits, the aircraft limits, the operational limits. So we shouldn't be so quick to judge, but immediately within hours of this event happening, it was on the internet. It was on all the news stations because some passenger was filming. So I think to answer your question in two folds, one is nowadays you can't get away with anything. If I made a mistake, everyone's going to know. And now the company's going to be liable to take action, whether that's retrain me or say, "Hey, he did everything correctly. This was a structural issue." So, but it's guilty until proven innocent in this industry. And now we have witnesses. And the difference between happening at a regional carrier as a captain versus a mainline carrier as a captain is just the scale of, if I make a mistake, more people are involved. Does that answer?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's more likely to make the headlines.
Yeah.
Right.
That's part of my briefing, flight attendant briefing. I talked about safety issues, anything written up in the back, the procedures on the security, and all we want to do here. The goal is we want to get to the hotel without being on YouTube or Twitter or X or whatever they're called nowadays, or TikTok.
That's right. You don't want to be the subject of somebody else's show.
Right. I don't want to be somebody else's clicks or likes or whatever follows. Right. Well,
and
good.
That's the good news is that when those things do happen and they do make somebody's show, that it's generally, again, as far as the airlines are concerned, not hasn't been a life-threatening situation. So we haven't, fortunately had anything more serious than say, "Oh yeah, listen to that audio tape or watch what those guys did." And good thing we have ASAP and ASRS and those programs, because that way the crews are protected from license action, so that you can actually, as you said, make it to retirement.
Right. That's the goal.
You don't want to end your career on a oopsie.
Right. Well, just don't put hidden cameras in lavatories, and I think you'll be okay.
That's a good start.
Hey, no one ever told me I can't do that. God, I hope they nail that guy. Oh my God, there's so many stories that have been posted lately in the past 7 days that I'm just sitting here going, really? It's just shaking my head. I'm like, I stay home for a week or two after training, and the whole industry is going to shit. Well, so, it's been fantastic speaking with you today. Before we wrap it up, just a couple more questions. One is, I've been told that a lot of people have a philosophy that as long as you continue to live out of your suitcase, you're going to live a long, happy life after retirement. Do you find this theory plausible? Are you going to still live out of your suitcase, or at least maybe pack a suitcase and drag it around for a while, a couple times a week?
I've unpacked the suitcase and put it away.
You did? Okay.
I've unpacked my flight bag and put it away. I've taken all my uniform items out of the closet and put them in the storage closet.
Okay.
So slowly transitioning back to, I do keep my iPad up to date with my ForeFlight. So one of my friends for my birthday / retirement gift gave me a subscription to ForeFlight. So I'm getting familiar with that because nice. I have a feeling I'm going to be using that a lot more in the future.
Yep.
So something new to learn. And so I got my poster from the flight office that people have signed. I got my retirement packet in the mail. So when you sign up for Medicare and insurance and you see that first check come in from the pension plan.
Yeah.
Then you say, okay. But see, at the moment, I got my first pension check and I got my regular paycheck from last month.
Uh-huh.
So things were looking pretty good as of today.
Yeah.
In a couple months, we'll when things settle down. Well, I guess there's going to be some more money coming in.
Yeah, you're gonna have a contract check. Yeah,
based on the new contract and my date of retirement. So it coincided exactly, and fortunately, I'm benefiting a little bit from that.
Good.
But starting next year, it's going to be whatever comes in the pension, and trying not to touch the 401k and the IRAs and all that.
Yeah, and
whatever I might earn. From employment or consulting or instructing or whatever I can fall into going forward here. But the retirement is it's a full-time job, and I've always considered retirement more as graduation. Okay. So it's like all right, I finished this. Now what's next? So
yeah.
Recently. I got to meet Billy Nolan, who had recently left as being the acting FAA administrator.
Yeah.
And does next chapter. And now he's working for Archer, eVTOL company. Mm-hmm. So when something ends, something else starts. And that's part of the journey until you can't stay on the path anymore.
Yeah.
But like I said, as long as I can keep passing the medical and keep passing the check ride and keep finding the airport, let's keep pressing on and see what's next.
Yeah. Have you ever given any thought to general aviation instruction, maybe becoming a DPE? I know there's a huge shortage in the country for designated pilot examiners, and that's a pretty good money. I think someone told me recently that check rides are going for about $900 cash now.
Yeah, that's true. And I don't know that there's a shortage of DPEs, at least in our area, but I know there is system-wide, there is. And I haven't looked into the requirements to do that, but that's certainly something to look at. The problem is, as far as I can see it, I haven't done a lot of general aviation instructing. in the last number of years. So to learn about what's required and then to be able to give check rides in all kinds of airplanes for all kinds of ratings is it probably take better part of a year to go through whatever certification process is needed for that.
Yeah, it can be intimidating.
But what I think I can do is do some instructing in some of the single engine turboprops that are out there now, because I've looked into that to some extent. When somebody buys one of those, they go through the training, and then whatever their insurance carrier requires, what we would consider IOE of 25, 50, well, some number of hours of going with a qualified instructor before they can take their airplane solo.
Right.
So that's something that I'm looking into doing as well. That'd be fun because that's more of a short-term thing. You go with a new owner for some period of time, and then they finish, and then you go on to the next one. So that could be a fun area to look at. Yeah,
I've always considered that. I was a flight instructor. I was the assistant chief at a place. And then I got hired on with an airline the same month that my CFI IMEI was going to expire. And so I thought about just taking the online course. It was going to be so many hours of study to accommodate this online course, and then it would have renewed. At the same time, I was on my very first airlines long-term ground training. So, I deliberated a little bit with the family. I was like, should I worked so hard. It costs so much money. And they all said the same thing. Do you plan on doing any flight instruction for the next 20 or 30 years? And I was like, no. And they're like, just let it go. You could always get it again. I'm like, yeah, it's expensive. I'm like, yeah, but you already had it. So you're a captain,
It's easier to keep it going and keep renewing it than to do a reinstatement.
Yeah. Because then you got to go up with an airplane and an instructor, and
that's an FAA term, reinstatement. You don't want to have to do that.
Right. So I
in fact, I just renewed my CFI here at the beginning of the month. So
cool.
I'm good for a couple more years.
Good, excellent. See, that's what I should have done. Ugh. So, but yeah, someday maybe one of my listeners will be like, "Hey, old man, you want to go up? I'll help you get your CFI again." And I'll be like, okay. So yeah. Just remember that. So, best advice to a brand new captain?
All right, all the brand new captains out there. Best advice: stay one step ahead of your crew. That's the best advice, because we've all been FOs where you've had to carry the captain. The captain didn't know what to do. The captain didn't do procedure correctly. The captain didn't do this. Captain didn't do that. And you have to gently remind the captain what needs to happen. So you don't want to be that captain. You're the one that wants to remind the FO, hey, we need to do this. We need to do this.
Right. You're the one that needs to be the sharp
and
one.
Stay one step ahead. Because the last thing you want is to be the knucklehead dummy captain that doesn't know what to do.
Yeah. No, sage advice.
So
thank you.
Stay one step ahead, and then be nice to your cabin crew.
Yes.
Work with them. Don't be on the cabin crew's naughty list.
Yeah, and that list it spreads like a virus. I mean, trust me.
Because,
I've heard
because
about.
I'll tell you, it comes around. I was just I mentioned to you offline here that I recently interviewed and was offered a position with an operator, and one of the management pilots that I spoke with, his wife was a flight attendant with our airline, and asked if they knew me, but she didn't. But another flight attendant friend of hers that she asked knew me and said, yeah, Captain Keith, he's great. You can't do any better than that. So when the cabin crew independently, without prompting, thinks highly of you as a captain and what you do and the way you treat them and the way you run your airplane, that comes back tenfold later.
Yep.
So be nice to your cabin crew. And I told them, whether you have one flight attendant or 13, be nice to everybody.
Yeah. Be nice, be professional, be courteous, and, try to put them, at the top of your list of priorities, because I've said it 100 times, if not 1,000 times. This is an extremely small industry. Forget about the numbers of how many hundreds of thousands of pilots are out there, or jobs are available. It's a very small industry. And the person you're flying with that you might not be getting along with today might be your boss someday, or be someone that you might need as a reference for a job. So yeah, be kind to each other. I think that's the key to a successful outcome in the industry, because we all have the basics down, right? We all learn how to fly. We all do our training. We all practice standard operating procedures. We do our best because we want to continue to have this privilege. But in that process, what they don't teach you, at least they try, but they really can't, because it's up to the individual, is be nice to people, passengers, cabin crew, even the ones you don't like, because in the end, you need to, like you said, stay one step ahead. And wow,
and
that's an amazing story.
Get to know your chief pilot.
Who?
Gets to know your chief pilot. Be nice to your chief pilot.
Yes, very much. I know that there's a common misconception.
Pilots are people too.
Yes, they're people too. They have feelings, and they're good enough. There's a common briefing that is said in jest. That is, my job is to not bang up an airplane and have the chief pilot not know who I am, and that's funny, haha. But no, that's not. You want the chief pilot to know exactly who you are, to have good opinions of you, because that way, when you need help, when you have an emergency, you have to taking care of something with your schedule, something with your home life, you want that chief pilot to go, oh yeah, Tony's a good guy. You know what? Let's take care of Tony. He's, we're going to, or if they don't know, who is this guy? No, tell him he needs to get to work, So yes, be kind, be courteous, know your boss. I still can't believe how many people fly the line, have been flying the line for a decade or more, and you ask them, who's the VP of flight right now? I don't know. Doesn't affect me. I don't know. Who's our chief information systems officer? I don't know. They keep changing. Oh, what do I care? I don't keep up with that. Do you read company emails, or do you? Nah. Yeah, it's going to have a lonely road ahead of you.
Not only the chief pilot, but your fleet captain, your fleet manager.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Get friendly with them, and if you got a suggestion, something that could be done better, or you notice app is behaving strangely, or if there's something that you've seen a couple of times that's come up, let them know. Yeah. Because they're also there to support you.
Yeah, 200 people have seen that chart is inaccurate and said, oh, this company, they can't even get an accurate chart. But that 201st pilot might be a new hire and might go, hey, Captain, did you see this chart's inaccurate? And then the captain says, hey, well, you're a new guy. Why don't you send you're going to want to send an email to our guy in Tech Pubs. His name is so-and-so. I'll get you that email. You can send it. I'm like, well, you're the captain. You send it. No, you make a name for yourself. Send it. Just ask a question. Hey, I noticed this is inaccurate. Am I seeing this okay? Or is there a change coming soon? That happened to me. And sure enough, the director of Tech Pubs emailed me back saying, First Officer Tony, thank you so much for pointing this out. We're going to put it in the next revision. Cool. And then, further on down the line, you might get a phone call when that person's the director of the fleet and wants you to go to another country to... I mean, that's how these things happen. And I love it when people go, well, how did you get that gig? It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm a nice guy.
Well, also, have you done any probation reports?
Not yet. I haven't even flown my first flight. That may be Friday. But yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I just did my Fed ride 5 days ago. Yeah. So
awesome. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
I was hoping that before I retired, I get to ride on your jump seat, or you get ride on my jump seat. And that just didn't quite work out.
Yeah. Well, you can always ride on my jumpsuit.
Bad timing.
Oh, no, you can't when you're retired, huh?
I can't.
That's right. When you're retired, you can't. I was thinking, well, you're a pilot. Well, yeah. Someday.
But I'll let me know. I'll be happy to ride in back with you anytime.
Oh, thank you so much. That's awesome. Actually, that's really cool. That's cool. Now, a couple more things. Are you going to start podcasting again?
Yes. In fact, I've got something lined up next month that I want to go to a concert and interview one of my friends in San Diego. I think next month, and I'm going to try to make that happen and reboot the podcast.
Yes.
So I will keep you informed as things progress.
Yes. And the band, when's your next gig?
We just have our 2 regularly scheduled gigs that we do every month, but sometime there might be another opportunity, and I'll let you know about that if something comes up. Also, we have the air show this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So the Pacific Air Show, if anybody's around, if this gets posted before this weekend, then everybody should go check out the Pacific Air Show, and they have a very nice website and a lot of social media, and the Air Force Thunderbirds are coming.
Yes. Yes, that, always a sight to see and music to my ears.
and for the GA crowd, avoid the area. There's a huge TFR.
Yeah. Know before you go. Yeah. Check those notems.
Right. And it's also a no drone zone, so keep your drones at home.
Yeah, especially at the beach. Come on, guys. Okay, well, I've kept you long enough. I do appreciate you spending the afternoon with us today. And on behalf of Rob and Alex, thank you so much for the conversation, all your aspects of what your retirement journey has been like, and all the advice as well. We really do appreciate having you on.
Well, trying to pay it forward and keep you guys going. You're going to have long careers and probably some wide body flying in your future before too long, I expect. So
yeah, I think so, especially out of LA.
Get to that point, we'll talk about things again. So I hear that there's going to be some airspace and procedure changes in the waters and North Atlantic airspace coming up. So
cool.
There's some exciting developments there.
Yeah. And well, that I'll be reaching out if that day comes here anytime soon. I'll be like, Keith, what do I do? Now, speaking of audio and all that you've done over the years with the podcasting, we've talked about in depth, like how you got into podcasting. We had some samples from your podcast on that last show that we did together on 111. So if you want to know more about the Klezmer podcast, check out episode 111. Highly recommend it. You've been so generous of sharing a lot of what your creative outlet has been over the years, in addition to flying, giving us this information. I really have enjoyed watching the YouTube clips that you have up there with the band and others as well. And we get audio here on the show as well. It doesn't happen very often. I'm always asking at the end of the show, hey, if you have any audio feedback, send it to us. You can send it right from our website. Now, on the aviatortony.com website, we have a link to send us audio feedback. Now, I've always said that my preferred method is pick up your phone, record a message as long as you need it to be, and just email it to the show. You don't have to do that. You can also use the link on our website. The only downside to that, and I've heard other websites that I frequent, or other podcasts as well, say the same thing, that, hey, it's 90 seconds. That's all you get. So a minute and a half, speak your piece, and if that's not enough, use your phone, record a voice message, send it to us. If you have a fancy little digital recorder, send us a high audio quality recording. We'd love it. We'd love to share it on the show. Well, earlier in the month, I did receive a couple audio feedbacks, and I want to share them with everyone before you go, if that's okay. Siggy sent us some audio, and yes, after 90 seconds, it cut out. So, Siggy, love the audio, man. Keep sending it. But just remember, 90 seconds. Start a timer. Send more than one if you have to, or like I said, just send us an audio file in an email. But here's some audio feedback from Siggy.
Hey, Tony and the whole Squawk Ident crew. Hope you guys are well. Sig here again, just sending you some audio feedback. It's been a while since my last one, and I just finished listening to your last podcast, and I really enjoyed it. Great content. And I'd just like to comment on the part where you guys discuss pilots using their phones when they're not supposed to be using their phones. And we once had, during a joint briefing, we used to have those joint briefings in my previous airline where we used to brief the cabin crew about, how the flight was going to go, flight time, and all that good stuff that we normally do. And me and the captain noticed one of the very young cabin crew, she was texting while he was talking, which was kind of rude. And after me and him went back to flight deck, we had a chat. He decided to just pull her on the side and just have a conversation with her. She didn't take it very well. She reckoned she wasn't doing anything so bad. She just reckoned that was just nothing written in the company SOP that she couldn't be using her phone. And I think when we talk about generation gap, we have to mention common sense, which is something that it's like second nature for most of us, but some people seem to be lacking on this. So, yeah, please.
And that's where it cuts out. So, I think he was finishing his statement. So, thanks for the content. At least that's what I assume you were going to say, Siggy. Thank you so much for that audio. We talked about that in the last show, professionalism and trying to be on your phone. We're all guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. Sometimes, you're so used to killing time on your device that you don't always realize that it might be a little rude for me to be doing this and not paying attention. And that's part of that generation gap that he mentioned. Well, I think either because he was kind of cut off there and realized that only 90 seconds went through or whatnot, he also sent us part 2. And let's listen to that real quick here now.
Hey, Tony, it's me again. Sig here, just to finish my audio feedback. I got cut out. Second thing I would like to ask Terry a direct question. He's mentioned he was in a leadership position for a very long time in the military. He's now flying as first officer. So I'd like to hear from him. How does he think a first officer can best assist a captain being assertive without being too pushy, without crossing that line and try to be the one in control? How does he think that can work for someone that has a lot of experience and sometimes will be flying with people that have less life experience and sometimes even less flying experience? So that's my question. And the third one is just to tell you guys always mention pilot shortage. So I would like to tell you how much your pilot shortage in US is affecting the rest of the world. In the region where I fly, we have seen an increasing number of pilots leaving to go fly in US, especially very senior captains leaving to fly as first officers. And that's a good thing. It's driving salaries to increase and also increasing the number of upgrades. That's all from me. Thanks for your great content.
Yes. And thank you, Zig, for getting it in under 90 seconds on that one. I didn't have to guess what you were trying to finish up there. If you're going to send audio feedback, thank you so much for sending it. I don't care how you send it. I love receiving it. We all love talking about it after the show as well. But I don't have Terry here today with us. He's flying the line. I'll make sure that either I play that audio for him on a future episode so he can answer your question directly. But, I got the next best thing here. I have a captain with 38 years of experience flying airlines that could probably eloquently answer that question as well. So, Keith, how would a first officer gently approach a captain who might be using his personal electronic device mid-flight or during a time in sterile cockpit or something? that's against SOP? Should the FO just call them out on it, or is there a way that you would have preferred to have been approached if you found yourself in that situation?
Well, that's a really good question. Now, when I was a first officer and captain missed something or was doing something, and the subtlety works. Hey, Captain, did you mean to do this now, or were you ready? Are you ready for flaps yet? Or are you ready for this, or whatever the situation calls for? But as we've learned in the training and then the PLM training more recently, sometimes you don't have the luxury of time to get that other person to do what needs to be done. And you have to say, hey, go around, do this, do that, whatever the situation calls for, and then smooth it over later. But in the meantime, safety comes first, and you have to make sure that whatever needs to be accomplished is done.
Yeah.
And a good captain who has also received all the same training should be open to receiving that and then discussing later when that situation is passed. But no situation should be where the captain shuts down the first officer or the first officer shuts down the captain at the mere suggestion of something that needs to be done, or the idea that they missed something or made an error on something. If it's a crew and the crew is working well together, it's a give and take. And sometimes you come up with the thing that needed to be done. Sometimes you overlooked something and somebody will tell you that something needs to be done. When you're in a multi-crew environment with an augmented crew, 3 or 4, you got extra people that can give input to both the captain and the first officer, because maybe they both missed something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a critical component too. So the more eyes you have watching out for things, the better off the crew is. Now, we're not running around with two-person crew and somebody on the jump seat all the time to make sure the 2-person crew doesn't screw up. Right. That's not the idea, but work with the assets that you have and use them to the fullest extent that's available to you. That's the best advice I can give.
Yeah. Well, just again, thank you. And for those that are intrigued about some of the other things that you do, like the podcast and the band and all the media things that you do with Eon Reality and Red Zone, give us some information. Where can they find more about these companies? Well,
Eon Reality has a lot of presence, a good website, and their app. Eon Reality, EONreality.com is their website. And I did a podcast with them recently concerning AI in aviation training. So you might want to check that one out. Everything else I do is at Klezmer Podcast. So Instagram, X, all of those. And let's see what else. Band stuff is we have some things on Spotify, so we can check those out. And that's pretty much.
And what was the name of the band?
South Coast Simca Band. And I play trumpet with that, so it's been a lot of fun. And we get to do a lot of fun things. Went to a release party with some rather well-known friends of ours in the studio in Burbank recently, so that was fun.
Cool.
And it's going to be Grammy season, so that's going to be fun to keep track of.
Yeah.
I'm in another group called the Flying Musicians Association, so you can check out the Flying Musicians Association. They'll be happy to take your inquiries for those musicians listening out there.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for all your advice and for giving us a perspective of what retirement was like. I do absolutely appreciate having you on the show today. So thank you.
Thank you. And it's been a real pleasure to join you guys once again. and tell you a little bit about what's been going on prior to retiring and the retirement day and what's been going on since that. So lots more to look forward to, and hopefully you'll have a chance to visit with you again.
Absolutely. And keep those audio and video files coming. I would love to keep up with your career and your progression and your journey.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you. I also want to say thank you to Rob, Captain Rob, and Alex D for joining us today, taking time out of their busy schedules to be here on the show. We also want to say thank you to all of you that have been listening and sharing this podcast online and with your friends. Be sure to subscribe and follow the Squawk Ident Podcast on whatever platform you are listening on. We also love receiving listener feedback. You can send us an email or even audio feedback via our website at aviatortony.com. That's Alpha Victor, the number 8, Romeo Tango Oscar November Yankee.com. There you'll find audio archives, photos from the flight line, the guest book photo tab, and other Squawk Ident pilot shops and accessories. We have an assortment of t-shirts and hats and mugs and all kinds of stuff on the link there on the website. You can also contribute financially to the show right there on our homepage. Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram users can find us under the Squawk Ident Podcast. And one final thank you to all of you for taking the time to listen to these grateful aviators. Keep the dirty side down out there. Be safe and take care of each other. Bye, y'all.
See ya.
See ya.
Cheers.
Do you know anything